So without further ado, I welcome Randy Cohen and Vinnie Bagwell.
Thank you, Eli, and thanks for having us. I'd like a tiny bit of further ado just to say that yesterday was Ella Fitzgerald's birthday.
Yes, it was.
Pretty great, pretty great. So who's your person?
My person is actually my daughter, Pierre Bagwell Green. I was lucky enough to have the one good girl I asked for. And of course, the joy is when you have a child that's a mini you. I have a mini me. So
Really?
she's very talented.
So we're just replicating ourselves?
Yeah, but she looks like me, but she's talented like me, but like to the next degree, which is so joyful. I remember the day I found out that she could draw really well. I mean, I had to stop what I was doing to go see her art teacher and ask, how did you get to have keys to my child? It's like, she's been looking at me all this time. How did you do that? And so she got into Parsons, got out of Parsons with flying colors. And her first job straight out was the senior graphic designer for Penthouse magazine. And she brought it back to life so much so that somebody bought it and kicked out the whole New York office. And so she became unemployed for quite some time, and it was alarming for her because she wanted job security. And I'm like, there's no such thing as job security. It's like,
well, not for artists like you.
No. And so I said, you gotta hustle. And she's like, I don't wanna hustle. I said, nobody wants to hustle. Grown-ups, nobody wants to go to work in the morning. It's like, this is what you gotta do to eat every day. Take care of your kids and stuff, you gotta hustle. So anyway, long story short, she came home crying one day, and I'm trying to console her and try to give her confidence. Come on, this is a God walk. Just buckle down. Hold on a second. And finally, I said to her, you may have to find something else to love. For artists, we work for love, not for money. We work for love because we serve God and all that kind of stuff. And so, to make a really, really, really long story short, she's in nursing school to be a midwife. And I didn't know that I was raising an artist and a saint, okay? Not to mention that she's really, really smart and she's acing it. So she wants to birth babies for a living. And of course, I rely upon her because she knows so much more about art history and art everything. Like for instance, today I begged her to please help me with Photoshop because I was having some difficulty with something I don't know. And I rely upon her. She's like my go-to girl when I need graphic design or things like that, because she's better than me. So she's definitely my person. And of course,
do you think that well, you're incredibly visually sophisticated, and that she had right away a knack for the visual arts? Do you think it's genetic in any way? Does it run in families?
Oh yeah. Look, my daughter, my mother, my father, my sister, my grandmother, my aunt, my other aunt. I got a plethora of cousins that are painters, photographers. I got a couple of sculptor cousins. It definitely is a gene, and it's not uncommon to find, somebody sings, they got kids that sing, they had a mother that sang. That's so normal. I think that artists are a race of people.
Vinnie, do you think when she was little, seeing you as a working artist, did that make her want to go into the family business, or did it cast kind of a giant shadow?
She says, I'm not like you in that respect, in that, I am willing to take flying leaps into the unknown, trusting that the net's going to appear. That used to be my favorite thing, leap and the net will appear. She doesn't have that kind of, for lack of a better word, vision. Like I see things, I know what's going to be real. Like, I'm like, oh, it might be far away, but I'm like, no, just have to live long enough to get to that. That's not how she sees the future. She does conjure kind of like I do. Like I will what I want. Like, I will the weather. If you never have a party and you want the weather, call me up. But the point of it is that she doesn't kind of go at it with that same kind of, for lack of a better word, faith. And she also saw me do these flying leaps and, the terror of not knowing if you're gonna go splat, and I'm cool, but everybody else is freaking out. It's like, no, it's gonna work. Hold on a second, just hold on a second. You don't go splat till you go splat. And so For the people who've known me all my life, they'll tell you in the early years, they thought I was nuts. Like, oh my God, now she's doing this, now she's doing that. And of course, as things begin to work, people begin to realize that, no, she knows something, there's something to her. My daughter has that ability. She just doesn't trust it yet.
When she decided to go into the family business when she was young, were you glad? Were you scared? Did it make you nervous?
Oh no, I was very excited. I'm like,
Is that
okay,
part of
good.
is that part
That's
of the
great.
mini meanness? Is that the mini
No,
meanness?
no,
We
no,
want
no.
them to be like us, only better.
Yes, that's true. But also I saw it as an opportunity for me to learn with her. So
Oh,
for instance, that she declared in ninth grade she wanted to be a fashion designer. I said, oh, good. That means you got to learn French and Spanish and Chinese and Italian, because these are the places you're going to be going. And so my daughter learned everything but Chinese. So she learned French and Italian at the same time. I took her traveling so that she could go to these places, so that she could see what it's like to live someplace where everybody doesn't speak English, just to give her a hand, like, this is going to be your life. And then I sent her to art schools. For instance, FIT has a summer program, and I, say to people all the time when they have artist kids, send your kids to these schools that have the summer programs, because it allows them to immerse and see what life is like as an art student. Like we were living in Maryland. To go to school in New York City by yourself when you're 16 was a big deal.
mm.
She came back so motivated. I mean, so motivated to be the best. And she did very well. I mean, when she got in, she was in and she did very well. But not all artists do well in competition. See, that's the challenge. A lot of us don't. I didn't want to compete. It's a necessary evil. Only because I love sculpture so much do I compete. She doesn't love it that much. Like, she's a
Right.
phenomenal graphic designer, phenomenal digital artist, phenomenal Photoshop wizard, but she doesn't love it enough to not have the foundation of a paycheck every other week.
I know what you mean with that. When my daughter got out of college, she first set out to be a writer. And I thought that was terrific. And then she moved away from it. And I felt she was more talented than I am, but she didn't want to lead that kind of life. Was it sort of like that for you guys?
I'm gonna say yes, because my daughter is a planner. I'm a planner too, but she's a planner and she likes to have like finite variables. Like, she wants to know A equals this, B equals that, X equals this, Y equals. So when she does all her equations, she has all the answers. I'm willing to wait. Like, for instance, Christmas Day, I don't want to open presents at 12:01. I'm like, I can wait until like 9 o'clock after breakfast, because I'm willing to wait, and I think patience comes with age, the ability to be able to like relax and see what God's going to do. That kind of comes with time and age and experience. At some point you realize that you do not get to control everything, that there is some being out there that runs things around here and they got other ideas besides what you have. And sometimes it turns out better than you think. But a lot of times while you're sitting there wrestling, trying to get what you want to happen, and the universe has got its own ideas and you got these disparities, it's frightening. I mean, fear management is a big thing for artists. You have to learn how to manage yourself while you're in the middle of the big unknown, because the doubt is what kills art.
So when Pierre decided she was not going to be an artist, she was going to become a midwife, were you a little disappointed?
No. Because she asked me, would you be disappointed? She's point blank, she know me. Would you be disappointed if I decided not to be an artist again? I said, that's ridiculous. You can't not be an artist. We're born artists. We come here this way. It's like saying, what if I didn't want to be Black anymore? It's like, that's what you are. I said, you mean you don't want to work as an artist anymore? Is that what you're trying to say? Yes. I'm like, okay, so what do you want to do? She says, birth babies. I'm like, that's awfully noble. I mean, how can you argue with that? People want to help
No,
souls
of
do in the
course.
world. So I was like, you know what that means? That's like going to medical school. That's hard. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And mind you, she's paying for it. And so point of it is that, she delved into it. She's working for a trauma center in the COVID unit. I mean, this is sainthood. And I can't argue with it, but she's still doing art for herself. She's
Oh,
still doing what she was doing before, only now she doesn't have to do it by prescription for somebody else. And that sometimes is the difference. Like, we always want to make art for ourselves. We don't necessarily want to make it for other people based on what they want, because that's what makes making a working artist so aggravating, is because oftentimes you're working for people who expect you to be a genius, but they don't help you be a genius.
Oh, you're talking about the clients, the people who commission the work?
Yeah.
Those people.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started. I'm in the middle of something right now.
Oh, well, this is your chance if you want to get started.
Yeah.
Well, we
Okay.
can wait on that.
Okay.
Do you think, as a professional artist, when you see people who are doing work not as professionals, do they seem like they have a hobby? Do you look down on it at all?
No, I tell you what I do look down on. I look down at people who say, I used to be an artist. It's like, that's not right. That's not true. It's not right. Either you are or you aren't. It's like, what you are is based on what you are, but also on what you do. Like, some people say, oh, well, I just make this little stuff in my basement. And I was just like, yeah, but that doesn't make you any less. It just means that you're not trying to make little green pieces of paper with what you do. That's something else. But if you're constantly making stuff, wanting to make stuff, looking for ideas, things like that, that's what artists do naturally. We enjoy engaging the universe. This is a dialogue, it's constant talk in our head, and we're trying to answer questions for ourselves and things like that. I think that's just normal process, but everybody doesn't want to do that for a living. Everybody doesn't want to do that at somebody else's beck and call. That's sometimes when you lose the joy of it, because you're no longer doing it for yourself, and that's what makes it hard for a working artist, because you have to find that happy balance between what you want to make versus what somebody else will allow you to make.
Right. I've read that if there's something you really enjoy doing, never do it professionally, because it will sap all the joy out of it.
It can. It can. I think the challenge is trying to find ways to rejuvenate yourself and learn where your limits are. Some things, if you don't want to do it, then don't do that. And it's nice when you have an attorney who can get in front of you and be like, she didn't do that. That's not going to fly. The answer is no. Here's what we can do. We can do this, we can do that. You let somebody else argue for you. But oftentimes artists are not represented that way. And we don't feel like arguing with everybody all the time about stuff we do and do not want to do. So a lot of people don't have the backbone for it.
Have you ever turned down a commission because you just didn't like the circumstances?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
It was a big one too. I was like, I can't do this. I can't work with you people.
It never gets better than the first meeting, because they're never going to be nicer to you than then.
No, well, you know what? That was an indication, because they weren't nice. That's point number one, is that they were not respectful. They were not considerate. It was very, very lopsided. And then the person who was really taking over was really just ill-tempered and ill-mannered, and they let that person eclipse their organization. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you know what? I don't have to do this. I got stuff to do. And as far as I know, God got other stuff for me to do. So you know what? I'm going to make room for that stuff. I'm going to tell you, no, thank you. And then wait, see what happened. And lo and behold, I said, no, thank you. And the following week, someone came in, same money, balanced it out, and this is the thing where, again, you have to trust God. Let him handle his business.
Well, I like to end the segment on a note of trust and hope. And of course, you're going to let us know the name of that person and give us their address so we can all swing by their house at the end of the show. I should say, before we go on to place, I should let people know that if they will take questions at the end, and they should just type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So where is your place?
Oh, my place is here. I'm in my favorite place. My favorite place is my studio. I live and work in the same place. I like having the ability to work whenever I feel like it. I get to control my time. The building that I live in, this is an old trolley barn that was gutted and renovated here in Yonkers. And it's duplex, the whole building is duplex. So, it's an unusual building in that we don't have many buildings like this anywhere in the vicinity. I mean, for real though. And so, it's fun when people walk in and we're like, oh my God, because you got to look up because like an 18-foot ceilings, giant windows, light, space, and I got really cool neighbors. But what I really, really enjoyed the most is having the room to stretch out and be able to do public art in my house, and not have any real restrictions. I mean, that's a major adventure. And of course, I can walk by the sculpture and you never know when you're going to see something, just stop and work. Or, sometimes I want to take a nap and I go lay down and I get up in the middle of the night and I work in the middle of the night and it's here. And, it's fun when people walk in and like, oh my God, there's an 8-foot person in your house. It's like, yep. So I really enjoy being at home. Pandemic has not fazed me one iota because frankly, I got everything up in here I want. I don't really need to go outside. I used to contemplate the trash at 2:00 in the morning. Do I really want to take the trash out? It's like,
Vinnie, when you said you can do public art in your space, what do you mean by that? What kind of things do you do there?
well, one of the reasons why I really wanted this space is because I wanted to do civic engagement. I've been doing civic engagement from the very beginning. Of course, now it's trendy, but I like people coming into my house and looking at my stuff and talking about it. And so, when I was creating the public artwork for the Enslaved Africans Rain Garden, which is being finished this fall, there's 5 sculptures, life-size people. I wanted to give students an opportunity to see art being made. I wanted the community to have an opportunity to see art while it's being made. People are used to seeing the product. I want them to see the process. I thought it would help them to value sculpture more. And so I would have these giant parties, a couple of hundred people, I don't know, just wandering through my house, looking at my stuff and, eating good food and just having a good time and, having engagement. And they were really, really great events. People started looking forward to it, trying to figure out like, how can I get to go? And so it was really wonderful. I think also too, it helped the city of Yonkers specifically to really appreciate how much the community wanted to be engaging the art community, because we had been talking about this, years ago. At the end of the last century, we were trying to explain to them that if you want to revitalize the downtown waterfront area, you should let the artists help you because culture is what we do.
Well, Yonkers has an amazing history that from once being this, right, correct me if I have this wrong, but it's, first of all, it's unbelievably fortunate in its setting, right on the river. There's
4 miles of Hudson River waterfront that they were ignoring for like ever.
Right. It's not prosperous waterfront, and a train that gets you right into New York easily enough. And once this a sort of wealthy suburb of New York at like the turn of the century before, right? But it's harder in Yonkers now. It's a much poorer place than it was, I don't know, when they were doing Hello, Dolly.
No, Yonkers has evolved significantly. If you haven't spent any time here, if you don't know Yonkers, then you don't know Yonkers.
Oh, I don't know Yonkers, so tell me.
The downtown waterfront district has been like the darling of City Hall for the last really 25 years. I think Ella Fitzgerald, the first lady of jazz, the sculptor, was the first big thing that we did here. I went to them and I asked them to do her. This is before she died. And they said yes. And so Ella Fitzgerald died while we were working on this public artwork. And then it came to light that this was the first sculpture of a contemporary African American woman to be commissioned by a municipality, which is a very big deal for Black people anyway. And so this is when the city began to realize that public art can make a big difference in how your city is perceived. So that was part one. They gave us a gallery space. I used to run it and create programming. And again, the downtown waterfront district was blighted back then. There was nothing here. I mean, like really. And so used to give, again, these great exhibition art openings with plenty of food and lots of PR and stuff. And people started coming to downtown. And, I remember one time I gave an exhibition for Richard Haas, who is a Yonkers resident and a very renowned, Trump Lloyd muralist. And it was pouring down, raining, and people were standing outside up the street with umbrellas waiting to get in because it was so packed. And the city was like, wow, look at this. It's like, no, you build it, they will come. So of course, fast forward, now we have all these galleries in the neighborhood. This is a really cool neighborhood now. So it's evolved. They're in the middle of building 4,000 new residences, the downtown waterfront. So that's creating it. Lionsgate just moved into the neighborhood. So they're going to be making movies, over there at Lionsgate. And so there's a lot of stuff going on here, and they're realizing, that the arts make a difference. We have major jazz concerts here in the summertime. They just had a very nice concert for Ella's birthday over the weekend. And
right.
so,
Ella's birthday Sunday.
they're embracing the arts. And so this is, as I said, I lived here before there was anything really major going on here. Now I live in a really cool place, so if they ever decide to sell the units in the building, I might need 2 of them, but this is a great location because, as you say, Metro North, right outside the door. All the buses in the area will take me anywhere. I can get to the airport from here. It might take 3 hours, but the bottom line is I've got major mass transit, and everything else that you need is in the neighborhood. So, you don't need a car, supermarket 2 blocks up, fish market that way, post office across the street, library across the street, everything is kind of centrally located, and it's pretty. It's lovely living on the river,
Yeah, the river is fantastic.
It is.
Vinnie, do you ever feel, well, what's your relationship to the New York art world? Do you feel disconnected from it? Do you ever wish you were living in the middle of it?
No, I don't feel like I want to live in the middle of it. I wish I knew more people. Y'all invite me to some stuff, okay? Seriously.
Yeah. I don't think I know anybody, but yeah.
No. I'm talking about the people who's watching this thing. I'm saying invite me someplace. I'll come. Facebook. You can always invite me on Facebook. I'm kind of chore oriented. So for instance, I was talking about Brooklyn yesterday, and I was saying I always loved Brooklyn. I mean, I spent my childhood going to Brooklyn because I had relatives there. And I was saying how Brooklyn always seemed so avant-garde to me because, for instance, when I was growing up, we didn't have Black radio. You heard the Supremes, the Temptations, and Stevie Wonder. If I wanted to hear anybody besides those 3, I had to go to Brooklyn. But seriously, in Brooklyn, they had like the radio stores where they would play the music. And, my cousins were friends with the guy who had the juke joint. He let us play the big stereo. We could play our music and stuff, and there's a lot of arts-oriented stuff going on in New York City that I would love to immerse in if I knew what was going on.
Yeah. Do you feel, because you're working and living in Yonkers, does that change the way people look at your work?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
This has come up before, I think.
New York City people act like Yonkers is upstate New York.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. Do people condescend to you because you're living in Yonkers instead of in Soho?
They do. Yes, they do. They're like, oh, you live in Yonkers. That's upstate. It's like, no. Albany is upstate. Okay? Albany, that's 4 hours north. Yonkers is above the Bronx, for real. As a matter of fact, the Bronx used to be Yonkers, for real.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, I don't care what they say. It's like Yonkers is cool with me, and again, I come and I go. I can get to New York City in half hour. It's not a big deal.
Do you think living right? I mean, I envy you living on the Hudson. I think Hudson River towns are just unbelievably wonderful. And can you see an influence in your work because of that proximity to the river?
No, the only thing I can say is that living near the river is extremely relaxing. I mean, I like being able to take my lawn chair and drag it down to the river at any point and sit down there like I own that beachfront property and just chill for an hour or 2 and read and then drag it back home and be like, I've been somewhere. I don't have to go to the beach. I mean, I've got beaches that I can go to, but I just think, and it's fun when people come to visit, like, oh, it's like visiting a resort. And it's like, I never thought of that. It's good energy. And yeah, I'm sure that that's a benefit, but it doesn't show up literally in my work. I mean, of course, the Rain Garden project is site specific, but after that, it's just a matter of living someplace where I'm happy. That means a lot.
Was it hard? Because you spoke about how much you enjoyed public engagement. And so we've just been through more than a year when you can't really have 100 people in your studio. Was that hard to go through, and did it change the way you approach the work?
No, it's kind of like this. I've been Zooming. I mean, Black
Yeah.
History Month and Women's Month, I got zoomed out. I mean, like, I'm doing this. Um, it's 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 nice to still be able to connect with people, but I like looking people in the eye. I like feeling the crowd, like playing to the energy of the room or whatever the case may be. And so I'm always going to miss doing things in person. Um, I still let people come through here, just can't have big crowds like before. You know, I mean, I could easily have 10 people in here and social distance easily. And, you know, we do intend to continue to do that as, you know, time goes on. But luckily for me, my governor believes in public art, and he made me a essential business on day 2 of pandemic, just so that I could get my work done for New York State. So that is why Sojourner Truth was on time, you know, for the walkway over the Hudson, and why the Rain Garden project didn't get thrown off too badly. So it's nice that New York State, you know, prioritizes public art. I'm gonna give him 5 gold stars on that one.
We could say other things about our governor, but it's nice that he has
Let's talk
some
about public art.
public art. Is that's a really good thing.
Mhm.
I think we should move on and talk a little about your thing. And let me remind people again, we'll be getting to some Q&A. If you have questions for Vinnie, you can type them into the Q&A box and we'll get to them. So what's your thing?
This is my thing. Victory. I'm going to use Victory as my thing right now. In 2019, I found out about She Built NYC. I was so excited that the de Blasios had decided that they were going to make public art one of their legacies. And I was very, just, I mean, as a New Yorker, as a Black person, I was just like totally pumped about that. And so, you know, when they announced that they were going to put a sculpture in every borough, I had the hope that they were going to keep that open for the rest of us to apply for, because, you know, sometimes folks are insular. And so I was like, one of those is mine. And so the first thing that the first call they put out was for Shirley Chisholm, and I did not make finals for that. I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. And then they put out.
Let me stop you. So they knew what they wanted the subject of the art to be, and then they were going to commission an artist to do. They knew Shirley Chisholm before they knew the artist?
No. Originally, they put out a call for Brooklyn, but they didn't say what the subject was going to be. They just, you know, it was a call for qualifications. So qualifications basically is your cover letter stating your interest, your resume, you know, 10 of your best works, and your references. And then they decide whether they like you. And then the question is, how much do they like you? And if they like you enough, you become a finalist. But I didn't make finals for that. And then they announced it was Shirley Chisholm. I'm like,
oh, I see.
I put a rock Shirley Chisholm, but all right, whatever. But that's okay, because one of these is mine. So the next one they put out was for Beyond Sims. And I did not know the J. Marion Sims story. So I was like, what is that? And so, of course, when I discovered what the backstory, like, who does that? What?
Right. It's you have to explain to people what that is, and that there's this statue on the east side, right?
Okay, so ladies, when you go get your pap smear, that metal speculum thing they put up your vajayjay, that guy, J. Marion Sims, is the guy who invented this stuff, okay? He is considered the father of gynecology. How he got to be that was on the backs of Black women experimenting and doing surgical procedures with no anesthesia and no anesthesia and no painkiller after that. How you like that? Oh, and then after he's worked on these 12 women for a number of years and he perfects it, he takes it to Europe and uses anesthesia and painkillers. That became problematic for the community of Harlem and East Harlem. And they figured that out one day. They woke up from the ether and said, no, take that down.
So there's been, for many years, a statue of J. Marion Sims on the east side of Central Park.
At 103 on Fifth Avenue. And I'm not exactly sure how it began, but it took the community 10 years to get that sculpture removed. Then they had, you know, a budget of $1 million to replace it. And it's across the street from the hospital, and it's across the street from the Museum of New York. And it's down the street from the entrance to the Conservancy Gardens, which I did not know existed. Go figure.
Well, shame on you. That's a pretty great place.
I have walked around Central Park a number of times. You know, I have a friend that used to train for the marathon. I was like, okay, I'll walk while you ride your bike. But somehow I never discovered the Conservancy Gardens. I just didn't. So when I found out, I was like, ooh, because I love landscaping. So these were the things that were in the front of my mind, you know, when you first start, and this is the thing, those of you who are artists, you know what I mean? And those of you who aren't probably know anyway. When you're at the beginning of something, the reason why most people don't like the beginning is because the beginning, you don't know what the hell. You don't. You're trying to figure out what matters and what doesn't. You have all this chaos, ideas coming past. You don't know what to look at, what to think, or whatever. So the beginning is trying to figure out what matters the most. So I'm a representational figurative artist. I do people. I could do white people just like I do black people. I could do
You've
people.
done Teddy Roosevelt.
Hi, it doesn't matter. But the question is, for $1 million, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna do one big person? Am I gonna try to do more than one person? There's 12 people. And the fact that they only know the name of 3 doesn't matter, you know, so you're trying to figure out what to do. So make a long story short, I hear the voices in my head very loud. And at some point, several things came across my path. Number one, the concept of the victories, okay? A victory is a chorus of angels. Like you've got guardian angels, that's one chorus. You've got cherubs, those little baby angels, that's another chorus. You've got the archangels, you know, like David and Michael and them, but in the Bible, okay? There's a bunch of them, there's 7 different kinds of angels. The victories are the ones who receive you from the guardian angels at the end of your life, and they're the ones that take you back to the light where you came from. I like that idea. I'm like, that's interesting. I hadn't really paid the victories any mind. So I started studying victories. They say that when victories come to the physical plane, if they want to be seen, they usually come as musician and artists. And I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And so there were different things that I found out about victories that made me think, I'm gonna do an angel. So I started looking for Black angels in public art, because you know, you try to put yourself into context, like, I want to do something that nobody else has done. What else has been done? Well, you all call me if you find a Black angel in public art, because you just don't see them. If you Google, you'll come across things like Christmas ornaments, like Thomas Blackshear. You'll come across possibly paintings. I'm talking about public art in public places, sculpture, nothing. I mean, I've tried it. I've tried trying different keywords. Nothing comes up. And so, of course, I took offense. I'm like, so what are you trying to say? You're trying to say that there's no Black people in heaven? What are you trying to say? I mean, what does that mean? And this is the thing, you know, I talk about creating public art that represents marginalized people. Well, Black people have been marginalized in so many ways, even we don't know until we realize that we've been marginalized. So in this instance, I find out that we've been marginalized out of heaven. You know, Black angels in heaven, not according to public art, there isn't, not in America. You know, and so I'm like, you know what, this is New York. New York should have the first Black angel. That's what I'm thinking. So hi, I'm making an angel. And now the question is, okay, so what is she about? So on her, and if you Google, you can see her better. On her, there are these 12 women. And the whole idea is to talk about the relationships of women with each other. Women help each other survive. Something goes down this afternoon, I'm calling my mother. I'm calling my sister. I'm calling my cousins, my girlfriends, whatever the case may be. And women have a lovely way of rallying around each other. We support each other. So in the imagery, I'm showing that. You can see that there's relationships between these women. And again, women are a lot more chatty than men. We use about 1,500 more words a minute than men do. And we use them a lot of times in the ladies' room. Like, it is not uncommon in the old days to go to a movie and then afterwards go in the ladies' room and be putting lipstick on the mirror and then start a conversation with the woman next to you. And when you finish the conversation, it's like, here's my card. It's like, oh yes, I'm gonna call you. And then you actually call each other and become friends. Women do that. I don't know what men do in the men's room, but the point of it is that women are engaging very much so with each other. And so this sculpture talks about that. And then of course she's got the flame in her hand, which City of New York is probably not going to let me do because they want to suggest that that's going to be dangerous. And I'm like, really?
Wait, do you mean an actual flame, not a sculpture of a flame, but a flame?
I want a live flame. I don't see anybody talking about JFK's live flame. I don't see anybody putting that out on the regular. Not only it doesn't happen, I'm just simply saying that there are ways to mitigate it.
When you got the commission, did you, how much did the city know when you first applied? Did they just approve you as an artist, or did they approve you doing Victory, or how far along in your thinking did you have to be to do the application?
No, so I submitted my concept in August, and they had a finalist presentation in October. Nobody came. I was the only artist who showed up. I don't know how you compete for $1 million commission and you don't show up. I don't know how you could be Black competing for a major New York City public art project for $1 million, and not only do you not show up, you send your white representative for you thinking that that's going to go over well with the community. It did not. It did not. And so for 7 hours, we were in conference with the City of New York. The audience was very interesting to me. I mean, it didn't take me long to realize that I was favored in this room. I don't know these people. I mean, these are just people who are familiar with my work and, became familiar with this particular concept. And so it was a very warm crowd for me because, well, first of all, they were happy that I was even there. Second thing is that they already had their ideas about what they did and did not want, what they do and do not like. And they were very, very verbal and very, very explicit about why the other contenders were not the answer to the question.
When you say they are these people on a city art commission, or are these people in the community?
I'm talking about the audience, like it's 150
The audience is just people who live in the community and who care about this public art.
Yes, City of New York said, we care about your, your feedback, we're going to give you an opportunity to have your voice, come to this finalist presentation, and the room was packed. Room was packed. When I came out, very nice, warm welcome. I'm used to talking, so I come out like, hey, how y'all doing? Okay, let's get this show on the road, let's rock and roll. And I launched into it. And of course, I was very, very excited about my presentation. My partner in this project is Bryce Turner, who is a renowned award-winning architect. He doesn't do public art. He builds cities in Siberia and Dubai. He's a friend of my cousin's. And so the point of it is that, most days I can't afford them because the budgets aren't that big. They're just not. And so in this particular instance, I went to them and said, be my partner on this one because I think we could rock this. And so they gave me a phenomenal design. And I was just like, it literally made me squeal. I mean, like, I'm gonna win this. And so I was very excited. And, when I presented, I got a standing ovation. People like, yeah, whistling and carrying on. And, but, in public art, I've had enough experience to know that it doesn't matter what the audience thinks. What matters is what the selection committee thinks. And that was not a very warm selection committee. And so when they picked another artist, the community rioted for an hour.
Wow.
I mean, they did everything but throw furniture. They cried in each other's arms. I'm talking about bawling, not just tears, bawling in each other's arms, screaming, cursing, just carrying on. I mean, go to my YouTube if you want to see it. But the point of it is that I was stunned, like, wow. No, I wasn't allowed in the room, but I mean, I'm on the other side of the door and I'm like, ooh, they're tearing up in there. Ooh, they're mad. And so in the end, The city of New York hedged them by saying this does not have to be the final decision. You know, we could just take this into advisement. And that's the only way they got out the room, because the people were like, no, you got to answer us. Like, how do you keep us hostage for 7 hours, play to us like we matter, and then go totally against us with something we told you we don't want? If you put that up, we will destroy it. That's what they said.
Wow.
And no public artist wants their work regarded that way. Nobody.
I should think not. No.
So the next day, the winner was kind enough to step down, and I appreciate that, you know, because
So the other artist, she just withdrew.
Yep.
Well, who wants to put art up in a community where people don't want your art?
No, particularly when they threaten you, like, I'll destroy it. $1 million artwork, I'm going to destroy that. You put it up there if you want to. That was their attitude. I mean, they were sincere about that. And so, you know, at that point, it got even deeper because they were mad. City council called the city of New York on the carpet on the front of the steps 4 days later for abuse of power. And oh my goodness, you know, the oversight committee had to step in and find out, like, what is the problem? And they've had a couple of meetings, and, you know, the whole idea is that the city of New York needs to do some reform. And I'm going to agree with that because, you know, at this point, I've applied for a lot of public art commissions. I mean, I've won 20, but I mean, my closing ratio is something like 68%. So double that number and then some. You know, I've been through this process 50 times, I'm just going to say. And so I know who runs a good ship and who doesn't. I can tell you who's good in public art and who's not, who's fair and who's not. And I'm here to tell you, City of New York could use some improvement in their process.
So where does everything stand now? You have the commission, and how close are we to getting?
No. Let's make it plain. We're negotiating for the commission. It took me 18 months to get a draft for a contract. Can't explain that either, but that's okay. Point of it is that it took 18 months to get a draft for a commission. The terms were changed. It's like, oh, really? Oh, okay. So now we're looking at why the terms were changed and what that means to me. And so now we have to kind of make some adjustments.
So it's all.
We're in negotiation right now. We're in negotiation, trying to find a nice, happy middle point. And we're not far away. I mean, that's the only thing I can say that's encouraging, is that it's just a matter of time of coming to the middle. You know, I don't think that they're being unreasonable, not at all. It's just that there needs to be some tweaking.
So you sound optimistic that I'm going to get to see Victory is going to get to be put in that site, and I'm going to get to see it. Yes. All right. Well, I like to end on the note of some faint hope. It sounds like quite a slog. You ready for some, take a question or two from the audience?
Oh, absolutely.
What led you to create the statue of Frederick Douglass? And what was your process in deciding how to present him?
Well, Frederick Douglass Circle at Hofstra University is what I think you're referring to. Was originally designed for the northwest corner of Central Park. That's another talk show.
Where is Frederick Douglass?
I'm sorry?
Where there is Frederick Douglass now in the northwest corner of Central Park.
Yeah, but that's not mine. The one that I designed is at Hofstra University.
I see.
You know, I designed that corner and I did not win. And a couple of years later, when Hofstra put out a call for a public artwork that represents the history, the achievement, and the aspirations of people of color, I'm like, you need another zero behind that dollar figure, because that's an epic story, that question. To answer that question, you need a lot more money. But again, you know, with public art, you got to stay within the budget. So I was like, well, you know, again, I do representational figurative artwork. I do people. For $185,000, the question is, what one person, because that's about all you're going to get, what one person, if I had to pick one out of all history to speak for me, I'm gonna go with Frederick Douglass, because one of the most eloquent orators ever. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time reading his speeches and whatnot. I'm like, oh, I love this man, oh yeah. And so that's how I got to be creating that sculpture for Hofstra University. The Frederick Douglass Museum in Maryland bought the maquette.
I see. Another question from Wanda Chambers. who thanks you for all your beautiful work and wants to know the results. When will you know the results of the Harriet Tubman entries in Newark?
God, they're gonna make us wait till June. They want to announce the winner Juneteenth, which would be June 19th. I'm gonna live that long. That I have not been this anxious about a public art commission in a really long time. I decided to do Harriet Tubman like Harriet Tubman has not been done before. People either don't know or they forget. Harriet Tubman was only 29 when she first started being a conductor on the Underground Railroad. And the photographs that we've had of her all this time have been her old. Even the most recent image that came about her, if you know Black people, it's like, she's not really young in that picture either, okay? So I did her young. And I mean, come on, all of us that are 50 and above, come on, remember 29 when you were fluffier, you know, you had no lines, everything was better, you know? And so I made this really beautiful young version of Harriet Tubman. I just so love her so much. I mean, I really hope I get to do her big.
An anonymous attendee wants to know what materials you primarily work in.
Plastilina is an oil-based clay. Water is, well, natural clay is 85% water. The problem with natural clay is that water evaporates, and if you don't fire, then you know turns back into dust when the water evaporates. I had that problem. So I use plastilina, which is kind of like a putty. And it warms with the temperature of your hand. And so it can be very nice. I get mine customized because when you buy it, it's a little brittle. If you want to do your own, just add some olive oil to it. You buy it, grind it up with a cheese grater, and then add just a little bit of olive oil to it and work it out. And it gets real nice like that. And then of course I cast. So I have to have a mold maker make the molds. And usually my wall hangings are made out of bonded bronze resin. And usually my three-dimensional sculptures are bronze.
Other questions? Now is your chance. Oh, I have one while we're waiting for other questions. What do you think of the Frederick Douglass sculpture on the northwest corner of Central Park, especially as compared to the Duke Ellington sculpture at the other end of the park?
What do I think about it? I'll be honest with you, I don't think about it.
Fair enough.
When I first lost, I used to walk around with a picture of it in my wallet to show people, because people were like, well, if you didn't win, who won? And I would show them the picture and their mouths would drop open and I'd be like, I went to therapy for this. You know, there's something called nonsense. You can't make sense out of everything. Doesn't matter what you think, it is what it is. How you want to be about accepting it is another talk show. So at this point, what I've learned is that, you know, there are reasons for everything, but you don't necessarily always get to know what they are, and you're not going to like all the reasons either. So this comes the word unreasonable, illogical, irrational. It's like, okay, so tell me again why you picked that piece. Tell me again, you know, and again, there were reasons, and I can't argue with them. You know, this is the thing, is that there's no rhyme or reason for taste. Taste is relative, and it's one of those things that goes unaccounted.
Another question. What were you, can you describe your feelings when you were sculpting Marvin Gaye? And this is from someone from Yonkers is asking you this, who loves your work.
Thank you. I enjoyed working on Marvin Gaye. I played Marvin Gaye a cappella a lot, just so I could hear his voice with nothing else going on. That sculpture was really elusive for quite some time. For a long time, I just couldn't see him. And then one night he just kind of came. That's kind of how stuff happens. Like sometimes you're looking at it, you're trying to figure out, like, what does it want? What does it need? You don't know. You bring other people in, get their opinion. They don't know either. and then finally one day it just kind of clicks and it's like, oh wait, here we go. Part of the challenge that I run into is, being untutored, I just kind of do what I think. I don't really have quote unquote technique, just kind of do what I do and it works or it doesn't. And so sometimes I just have to wait. This is challenging when you don't have the time. People don't realize that, there's the time that you actually work, but there's a whole lot of time when you're walking around with the voices in your head, trying to figure out what's the best thing to do. And so I enjoyed working on him quite some time. I missed him when he was gone.
Another question, where was the most memorable place you toured?
The most memorable place I've toured? You mean like on vacay or whatever?
Oh, I didn't think it was a personal question about your vacations. I took it to mean as a professional.
Montgomery, Alabama.
Oh.
In 2011, I made a sculpture called Liberty. Liberty was one of 13 sculptures that was in the inaugural exhibition of the Freedom Rides Museum. And, they called me up and asked me to make it. And I said yes. I mean, I heard the voice in my head say, just say yes. And I had to raise the money to make the sculpture because it cost $7,000 to cast it in bronze. And my Facebook friends helped me. And so ultimately, I went to Montgomery for the inaugural, opening. And I got there early and I walked up the street to the museum and they had a barricade closing off the street. And I was like, oh, they're serious. So I went around the barricade because it was for cars mostly. And I walked into the museum and there were these 12 Secret Service people bending over something. And the guy turned around and very coldly said to me, what do you want? I said, I beg your pardon, that's my artwork over there. I'm just here to see how it's positioned. Well, you can't stay, you have to leave. Okay. Yeah, so I walked out like, dang. And that evening, the woman who was the director for the Alabama Arts Council came over to me and explained that even in the year 2011, they were still getting death threats and that it was a big deal that they were having this opening. That first of all, if you didn't register to get in to the opening, you couldn't get into the street. In other words, they had us all wear these tags that you had to scan. And if you didn't have one of those, you couldn't get into the street. Like they had a 2-block radius blocked off. And everybody who came who was a political person came with their own Secret Service. So the governor had his Secret Service, the mayor had, there was like Secret Service all over the place. And so the fascinating thing was that after all that was over, one of my Facebook friends who was there asked me, was there anything that I wanted to do while I was there? And I said, I would like to see the civil rights museums. And so she took me around and I got a chance to see the one where Maya Lin has, her mountain bowl out in front, with the water is running down and all kinds of stuff. And so it was interesting because the woman said to me, I've lived here all my life and I've never been to any of these museums myself. I'm like, really? And so I just found it really, really interesting just going to these civil rights museums and seeing some of these things that I had seen in magazines and things like that and going there firsthand and just really learning about the South, the Deep South. And all I can say is that we got a lot more work to do.
I should say. Vinnie, thank you so much for sharing those stories with us tonight and for your work. And I hope to see you both in Yonkers in your studio and when Victory is unveiled.
Yes.
On the east side, over by the Conservatory Gardens.
Well, come see her while she's in the house.
Okay, I'll be there. Thank you. And thank you all for coming, all the folks that were listening in. Good night.
Good night.